Season 4 of the Lehigh Valley Arts Podcast, where we explore the local arts culture and community in the Lehigh Valley.
We'll be doing this through conversations with individual artists, administrators, musicians, poets, actors, and arts and cultural organizations. We'll discuss all types of mediums with the goal of enriching local arts culture.
Welcome back to Lehigh Valley Arts Podcast. I'm Elise, and today we have an extra special guest host with us today, poet, author extraordinaire, Robin Gao.
Hi, I'm Robin. I use it, they, and he, him pronouns, and excited to be here.
Robin, thank you very much for joining us. I'm very excited to get to co-host with you. Robin was on the Lehigh Valley Arts Podcast back in March. If you haven't heard their episode, it's titled The Cryptid, the Witch, and the Poet, a conversation with Robin Gao, author of Dear Mothman. It's a fantastic episode. I had so much fun recording with you, and you should definitely go back and listen to it. But Robin, let's catch up. What have you been working on since this was March, I think, that your episode came out?
So much has happened.
It's been good.
I've done a lot of writing, which is fun.
Yeah.
I'm working on another middle grade book that's going to come out next year, which is exciting. It's like in its final iterations of editing, so that's cool. And I have a short story in verse coming out in January, in like a short story in verse collection, which will be really fun. It's about a bearded lady, and it's like a sapphic romance.
Ooh,
so
I
it'll
like
be very
that.
fun.
What, for those listening, can you kind of explain what you mean when you say like a verse?
Yeah, so it's like a story told in poems.
Okay,
Yeah.
Awesome. That's really cool. I love that. Yeah, it's been a very busy year for everyone. I feel like, I don't know what it is about this past year. There's so much cool stuff going on in the arts community in the Lehigh Valley, and
For
just
sure.
like so many good, happy things that are happening. I'm curious, like, have you had anything that you have been working on this year that you really enjoyed, or like something you even attended that you really enjoyed?
Oh goodness, there's so many things that I've enjoyed. I mean, I could talk about the gallery for the Nellie Mayrow exhibit, because like it was probably one of my favorite things that I like got to see this year. I am somebody who just like really loves like childhood and play and like the idea of play, and so like just the way her work engaged with that was really amazing.
Yeah. For those listening, Lehigh University Art Galleries, it closed on December 7th, unfortunately, but had a loan exhibition from the High Museum of Art in Atlanta, Georgia, of a loan exhibition of work by the artist Nellie Mayrow, who was born in 1900, lived until 1982, and was kind of identified as like she didn't identify this way, but art historians have identified her as kind of like an outsider folk artist. But her work is very, I like the word that you said, play. Like, it's very playful. It definitely has some, like, people say childlike a lot, which I think I can go either way on, but it's definitely very free, which I really like.
I feel like she plays with like the wisdom of those things. Like, I feel like if you just like write it off as childlike, it doesn't get into the depth of like, I think that she's exploring something to do with like freedom of like before we're taught all the like terrible things, because of the ways that she plays with like gender and race in the pieces. And yeah, I could go on forever about that, because like I collect toys still. Like I am like very much in the realm of like I don't know. I feel like when I left the exhibit, I was like, I feel like we'd have a lot to talk about, like if I were able to meet her.
Yeah, so since I work there, I've been teaching about her and about her work for the last 3 or 4 months, and she just seemed like such a dynamic person. Like, she was so passionate about just making art for the sake of making art. I don't know. I would tell kids, like, when they'd come into the exhibit, like, I don't know that she ever intended that she thought she would be famous, but I don't know that she ever intended her work to be like studied in a museum this way. But I'm glad, because sometimes, especially with work that is created out of alternative materials or stuff, sometimes that's the best way for it to maintain like its preservation.
Yeah, so it doesn't fall apart.
So it doesn't fall apart. But yeah, I think just the stories people would tell about her, she seemed like such an incredibly dynamic person, and her stuff is so colorful. And I like what you said, like, it really explores kind of almost this like reclamation of a life that she didn't get to have as a child, but got to like come back to.
Yeah.
So yeah, she seemed like a cool lady.
For sure.
Yeah. And is there anything that I know you said you're working on a book and a short story in verse, but is there anything else that you've been up to this year, or anything that you're excited about? Or I had a you were in this meeting the other day. I was like, share a brag from this year. Share a brag about yourself a little bit.
I've been really excited about the work that Queer and Trans Lehigh Valley has gotten to do this year, and I'm excited for us to do more of it. We've been teaching like a lot of different kinds of, honestly, all kinds of workshops, whether it's like skill building or art. And I really like when we get to like mingle the two things together. And it's really beautiful to see like just queer community forming in all different kinds of spaces. We have a solstice party at the end of the month that I'm like super looking forward to. But all in all, I'm just really grateful for the space, and also for the ability to like raise funds for community members, because like our community really needs it. And like, I feel like things have been really tough economically. So that's something that if you want to support queer folks, we do like direct fundraising. So all the calls are just money going to those people. And we don't be a middle person. We just are like, hey, help this person get healthcare,
Yeah. No, that's great. And I know you said you have a solstice event coming up, and I think, I'm sorry to those listening, I think this episode will be out before or after that happens, but is there a place people can find like
for
stuff that
sure,
you have
for
going
sure.
on?
We have an Instagram that's just queer trans LV at. And then also, if you don't have Instagram, we have like a newsletter. So if you just look up Queer and Trans Lehigh Valley, you can sign up via like a Google form to our newsletter, and we put it out once a month that has everything that's coming up. Yeah, but it should be good. Good start to the year. We have a few workshops in the beginning of the year. We're gonna do like a cooking on a budget workshop.
Ooh.
That it's been highly requested, so it'll be fun.
That's awesome. Good. Well, I'm so excited. In a little bit here, we're going to welcome our guest, Chloe Cole Wilson of Basement Poetry, and I'm so glad that you're here to to host her interview with me. But I wanted to know if you would talk a little bit about kind of your connection to Basement Poetry and just your connection to poetry in general before we introduce them.
Yeah. Well, like I feel like I want to talk a little bit about my connection to Chloe too. Just they were just like the first person who I really met in the Valley who like made me feel welcome. And I feel like I can't think about like the arts community in the Valley without thinking about Chloe. They are just like such a dynamic connector between people and between spaces. And then also such a great artist themselves. And yeah, basement poetry is fabulous. I love that it's evolved over the years to be so many different things. I think in the coming year, it's got a lot of really cool stuff happening. I'm on the board, so I'm bragging a little bit, but honestly,
brag it up.
really just bragging about the work that Chloe and Khalid and Deirdre do, and many other folks involved, but they're doing a lot of the work. I think it's just really beautiful to see lots of multidisciplinary art spaces that feel really organic and community based, with a lot of thought given to not just the ability to create art, but also the ability to like rest and have comfort in between, because it's kind of rough being an artist sometimes. And I think that Chloe puts in a lot of care to those kinds of spaces. So she's brilliant, and just excited to chat.
That's such an excellently glowing review. So just a little bit about Basement Poetry. Basement Poetry is dedicated to empowering diverse communities through the performing arts and poetry. They create opportunities for cultural participation and education in theater, focusing on works that address contemporary issues while amplifying the voices and talents of women, LGBTQ, and BIPOC individuals and communities.
Chloe, I'm so glad to welcome you to the studio.
Yay. Thank you for being here. I feel like this, at least for the podcast, has been like a long time coming. Like we've been hoping to have you in for a while.
Oh, that's awesome. Yay.
We're big fans behind the scenes. So I'm very happy this is all coming together. But I figured we could just I want our listeners to know a little bit about you and who you are and what you do, and just like make some space to celebrate you.
Well, that's so nice. Yay. It's so hard to talk about myself.
That's okay.
So,
That's what we're here for.
hi, Chloe again. I really, really, really enjoy my 2 cats that I have, Nike and Miss Lady. They're awesome. And they've been beefing a lot. So like that's its own thing. But anyway, so I'm born and raised in Allentown in the area. Have always loved performing arts since I was very young. My first love of performance started with a Britney Spears number and a pair of tap shoes at the Moser Village Family Center. So I'm like really from here. But yeah, a dancer at heart, not in body as much. And then I loved watching folks perform poetry in the area. I loved watching plays and musicals in the Lehigh Valley. I grew up with a really cool set of parents, my mother and my grandmother, who like would always be like, "Oh, you wanna do that? Like, yeah, like let's do it." So I played flute for a little bit. Always wrote poetry. Always had like a very needed to share my story core about myself. So poetry core for sure. And yeah, I don't know. It's really hard to talk about myself.
You're doing great.
So I always loved that. My first poem was in poetry.com when I was like 13 years old. And I thought I was going to the big leagues. But I'm here, which is great, which is fine. I love it. I love this place. I love this town. But I've always had a heart for serving this community. There's something so special about the Lehigh Valley, and that no matter where you go, there's always a piece of the valley with you, and you always end up back here in some shape or fashion. So I moved to Orlando, Florida, right after I got out of high school. I did Disney College program, came back, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna like be committed to this space. I did costuming, ran the costume shop over at Dorney Park like years ago. So I have like a multifaceted experience in all different types of mediums of art. Still can't draw, just so everyone knows. That is not a medium for me. But yeah, and yeah, that's a little bit about myself.
Dancer, music lover, everything
all
in
the
between.
things, just
not a
chilling. Just not, I can't draw. I'm gonna keep it real with y'all. That is not my forte. I'm very good at stick figures, but my stick figures can't sit. So they always stand, so that's it. That's all I got. But yeah, happy to hang and be here.
We're so glad that you are.
I always think of you as like such a multimedia artist. Like, how do you gravitate towards one or another based on the subject matter? I'm just like curious how that comes about.
Thank you. I love a vibe, like I just like
a great answer.
Well, that's the thing. Like, if you were to ask my mom, like my mom was like, yeah, and like she did field hockey, and then she was playing the flute, and then I don't know, the dance stuck with her, but then she was in choir and she loved that. And so like I really am like a vibe person. I don't believe in the idea that, and it might get a little spicy, so please don't be upset, but I don't believe in the idea that like artists like perfect one medium, or we are only one identity. Like the beautiful part about art is that we can kind of play and grow into mediums. And so like, I think now, as I am trying to learn like who I am in my 30s, I really am gravitating to more visual art, and trying to figure out like what resin means to me. I really love collaging. Like collaging has been like a huge part of my art style, especially, I don't know if anyone knows who Ray Yukon is, but like incredible artists in the community. And like really like I've been inspired by his collaging projects since I've met him a couple of years ago. And so that really inspired some of the work that I did in the beginning of this year, Restoring Petals. Like a lot of that was collaging and like and a little bit of interior design and set design, that coming from my theatrical background. And so, yeah, like I just kind of like gravitate towards things. You know, my partner hates it because I always have like a box of interest, like just it's like, oh, are we getting rid of this interest today? No, not yet.
Keep all of it.
Don't throw in my stuff.
I don't relate to this at all.
Like knitting, like so yeah, like I don't know. I think it's about vibes, and I think it's also there is just such a liberation with trying new things and like allowing yourself to claim that thing as your own. Of course, there are styles of which people perfect, and I will never be that. I don't think, and those artists are important, especially since those artists are historians. So like to perfect a type of artwork is important and vital, but for me, I'm all about kind of encapsulating what's happening in the now through my art, and like how do I do that so that the art can speak for itself in years later. So doing my own historian work. And yeah, I just like vibe. Yeah. If I feel like writing a poem, I'll write it. I'll take the time to do it, you know. But the mediums that I think I've held on to the most was dance and poetry. Those are definitely the two that I kind of like spent a lot of time in. Haven't danced in a while, but I'm working on that. Working on getting in a class. I need to get into a class. So yeah, it's been years.
As someone myself who is not a poet or doesn't identify as a poetry related artist, to me it kind of has this like elusiveness to it, or this like mystery of like being able to write in that way. And weirdly enough, like the piece I most recently display involves a poem that just kind of like came out, and now I'm like, maybe this is something I could be into. But for me and for those listening, like I wonder if you could talk a little bit about like how you found poetry, or like how I know you mentioned as a kid it kind of came into your life, but what did that look like a good book? Or
I have a lot of feelings, and my grandmother really was super awesome in that she buys this very big screen and tall tower computer and says, all right, I want you and your brother to be a part of the 21st century. And it's like, this computer is going to change your life. And she was very much about that. But poetry.com, I don't know if anybody remembers that website, and I think it still exists, but I would go on there and it was almost like webtoons for folks, or like Wattpad. I would go on there and there would be like poetry from all different types of people. And then the folks weren't famous or anything, but that's where I gravitated to poetry. There's so many amazing and gorgeous writers, but that are mainstream, but really it was poetry.com that really set it off for me. And then, you know, like once puberty really started to set in for me, I was like, I got a lot of feelings. And so I started writing out a lot of my trials and tribulations as a middle school, high school kid. And yeah, I've loved it ever since. And they felt like diary entries. And when I revisit them, it really feels like home. So yeah, love poetry.
I know it's come up, and I know in many of the spaces that you work and operate, like we talk about using art as a form for healing or for personal growth, or even just a space for like relaxation. And I'll pose this question to both of you. Like, how do you feel like poetry or writing as an art form kind of serves that mechanism for you?
I feel for me, especially, and I'm speaking directly to Gen Zers, millennials, like folks that are chronically online. Like there's something about writing that feels very like peaceful, and you're putting something to rest. but also it doesn't feel like if no one responds to you in writing. So you have this like freedom to say what you need to say. Like there's no likes, there's no comments, there's none of that. It is like literally you and the page, or you and your notes and your phone, like, and you just write, and there's no need for people to commentate. And sometimes we need those spaces in order to not only just like process what's happening or digest what's going on in our lives, but to also remind ourselves that we are right in our experience. Like this happened. And I think there's so much gaslighting on social media. There's so much gaslighting in our world because people will say, well, you can't truly feel like that, especially for marginalized communities. I think poetry allows people to set the stage for themselves. And it's a beautiful and liberating experience. And you can decide if it goes into mass consumption of capitalism and things like that, or if it stays in your phone, or if it stays in your notebook. So, yeah.
I'm so curious, how do you make those decisions with your own work? Like how do you go like, this is mine and or this is something I want to share sometime?
I don't know. It's something that I'm struggling with right now. So I wrote a chapbook called The Hospital Stay, and I'm still playing with the name. And it's about my experience in an inpatient mental health facility. And like, I wrote about the people I met, the experiences I had, and how essential that moment was for me to kind of be where I'm at today, which is alive and well and okay. And for some folks, it's not that experience, but it was a really important time for me to kind of talk through, okay, what happened? And I go back and forth all the time. I'm like, do I want to release this piece of work? Do I need like the scholar or the Goodreads review of my book? Like, do I want that? And like, there's a part of me that's like, this book may go to editors and like may go to editors, may go to places where it will be sold. And then sometimes I think to myself, like, maybe it'll just be like a chapbook that's sewn together. And I'm just like, here, you want to check this out? So I don't know, like it's still a challenge for me. And I feel like once you put it into the world, it's hard to bring it back to you. It's still a part of you, but it's hard for it to come back. So like, yeah, it really depends. I think one of the biggest things was that, particularly with that chapbook, I wanted to make sure that the stories of inpatient care was talked about, because one, in the care that I received, there was moments in which I was like, I am clearly a Black woman here because I am the only Black woman on the floor at the time. And like, I had to get prescriptions for like hair products and like all of that kind of stuff. So like, I want to talk about that. And it is not the only option to take care of your mental health when you're in a crisis. There are so many ways to take care of yourself if you're in a space of suicide or a suicidal ideation or contemplating suicide. So yeah, and I wanted to tell that story and allow people to have those connections and remind people that like there's a community of folks dealing with mental health challenges and managing them each and every day. So I have the social justice piece, but then I have this also like, I want to protect myself and avoid the 1-star Goodread that's like, this book was terrible. And I don't like that guy. I don't really care for him.
He's always there. He's always there.
I know. I'm like, but I'm not ready for you. Like, I'm really ready for myself, so it's hard. I find myself being like, where does my writing go? But I think that's why I gravitate towards performance, because you get it. And if you wasn't there, you missed out. Yeah. You missed out. Yeah. So, you know what I mean? But yeah.
There is something very beautiful about like performance as like a fleeting art. Like it's there and then it's gone. So I've always appreciated that about like your performance spaces that you cultivate. Like, there's something very beautiful about like having been there, like at any of the Restoring Petals readings or stuff like that. There is like a nowness of the art in that sense.
Yeah. I think so like I have incredible fear of like cameras and like pictures and videography. So it's something that now, as I am working through, like, how do you market basement poetry? Like, that's not the work for me. Like, I can care less that like hundreds upon thousands of people are invested. I'm really, really being intentional about the people who need these services and need this support and need this art space. But it can be really challenging in doing that too. But anyways, so because I have this fear, there's so many things that the company has done that it's just not documented very well. And a lot of folks, like, it's like oral history. I'm like, you went to the show. What was your experience? Like, wow, that was a minute ago. That was like almost like 6 years ago, you know? So I'm getting better with like keeping up with like recording events and taking pictures and being more open in that so that we can remember the time we spent together. But there is something about being in person and enjoying performance with the audience and, you know, having that as a memory. So there's just like a power in that because you're so present. Like, the world asks us to not be present so often. We're thinking about the future. We're thinking about what we're going to cook for dinner. We're thinking about, you know, what do the kids need tomorrow? What does the future hold in 2025? Like, we're constantly thinking about things that are not in the now. And so there's something beautiful about performance and being in the now with the poets and poetry and music and the folks that come and do like open mic workshops with us or whatever the case may be. So there's just something beautiful about the now.
I wanted to kind of connect back to something I know that you both mentioned in your question and your answer that like I struggle with, and I know a lot of people that we talk to either through the podcast or just in general struggle with. And it's kind of this idea of like balancing as someone as part of a marginalized community, whether it's race or mental health related, like, where is it your responsibility to educate other people as someone coming from that community versus like making the art and time and space for yourself paired with like this community organization that you're running? Like, you're serving all of these people, and how do you balance like making the time just to do it for you? And I think that negotiation, that question that you mentioned about like negotiating whether or not do you release something or not, or like do you just leave it in the journal or not, or like does it stay on the canvas and then you throw it away, kind of thing. Like,
I think one of the most important things about the work that I do is making sure that there's choice, right? Like, if I'm going to introduce something that is, you know, like triggering or anything like that, like content warning, like these are the poems that I'm reading. If you feel like you need to take a second and like step out and use the bathroom, smoke a cigarette, do whatever you got to do. Like, I feel very comfortable in saying that like some things aren't for everybody. And I think that is important as we as in basement poetry is starting to figure out like what the community needs. Like, it's been really important that like there's like an individual piece where people need like, you know, consultation support and things like that. But I think it's really, really, really important that as far as like educating the community and taking time for myself and all of the balances, I think basement poetry as an incubator is an educator and an agitator. So like our existence is to make sure that marginalized voices and marginalized experiences are being spoke about, and that we're not deciding like, oh, we're not going to talk about mental health because there are these obstacles here. No, like, you should feel freely to talk about mental health if it's coming from your experience. Like, let's liberate that and talk through that in a safe way. And so for basement poetry, it's that. As far as like my own arts journey, I think a lot of the poetry that I read out loud is all in activism. And so it's meant to be read out loud. It's meant to be seen and witnessed. It's meant to be an engaging piece of work. And so a lot of the pieces that I write about being Black and being queer. And so oftentimes when I look at like, you know, something to do at the end of the night, I'm like, you know what, maybe this is the open mic that I decide to sit out in, because I don't know if people are going to really understand the poetry that I'm sharing. So I'm just going to, listen in. But this feels like a really comfortable space for me. And again, I'm all about vibes. Like, you just got to follow the vibe. But I think having the liberation to make those choices as we're in the moment, I think is so important. But as far as basement poetry and the work that we do, we are centered around having those social justice conversations. We are centered around making sure those marginalized experiences and stories are being shared from perspectives of marginalized people. And that is so, so important. We make the choice to do it in our mission statement. Like, we're making this active choice. And so for me, though, I usually decide, like, you know what, maybe this isn't the audience for that, and it's all in a vibe. If I feel safe and comfortable enough to, I'm like, well, you want to hear my sad girl poems? I'm here. But my Black sad girl poems might be for a different audience.
That's such an important thing. Like, even just to give yourself permission to like do that is hard sometimes, and I think hard for a lot of people. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate like your explanation was very good of how you kind of navigate that. So while you're here, I want to talk about your organization, Basement Poetry, and kind of like your role within that work, because you guys have been around for a long time.
Like, Basement Poetry did start in a classroom at Northampton Community College by inspired by the late and great Bill Munimer. So I do want to make sure this episode is dedicated to him, because he just passed recently. So he was a huge part of the work, because he just was like, well, he's all right. My students want to do something. And like, we wanted a space because we weren't feeling seen in our theater program. But like, Bill Munimer did an incredible job in being like, here's my classroom, put a show on, and really enjoy your work and believe in you. And like, even after that, so supportive. And so started as a community group of young women who were like, we have poems, we want to read them. And now we've evolved, and there's been a lot of change in the organization. We became a nonprofit in 2022. And so that was really exciting moment for us. And now in 2023, I was accepted into the Art and Actions Fellowship at the Allentown Art Museum, where I think Basement Poetry had the opportunity to really grow into an organization. We did Restoring Petals, which was our first project that we've done in a really long time, because Deirdre is the president of Basement Poetry. We needed some rest. Especially during 2020, we did a few projects with the southsider.org. And we have and you can still go on the southsider.org to see the poets that we highlighted during the Black Lives Matter uprising. And so there was some really cool stuff that we posted. And then we had many of those artists then perform. So after that endeavor, we were like, we got a lot going on in our personal lives, and we're going to just take a beat and rest. That's the great part about Basement Poetry, is that, yes, we are a nonprofit, but we're only going to move and ebb and flow with community. And we're also going to move and ebb and flow within the constraints and the ability of who's, running it and making things happen. Sorry. So in 2023, that opportunity really helped us figure out, one, who do we want to be? What do I want this organization to be? What does the community want this organization to be? What does Deirdre want this organization to be? And so in 2023, we did I think one of the largest projects I've ever done in my whole entire life, Restoring Petals. There was an incredible amount of design, talent, so many talented people. Darius Foster was our music director and producer for the soundscape that Restoring Petals had. The mural that was created was designed by Ray Yukon, Genesis Rodriguez, and Michelle Wilson. So the three of them, they did an incredible job, and they created a mural that kind of centered the space. We worked with families who lost people during COVID-19 to create a beautiful place of just honoring folks who died and like giving the families an opportunity to create art with me. Created art for some families as well through resin medium. And so that was really cool. And collage, there was just so much. And then we had a podcast too, which was an interesting endeavor. And so that podcast talked about, and Robin was also on that podcast as well. But we talked about the experiences that folks had during COVID-19. And so Restoring Petals really became a larger than life experience. And we had an incredible set of poets and performers. Latrice Young did an amazing poetry workshop that then translated into a performance and a devised theater performance. It was just so many amazing people on this project. And Incorrect Poetry, Rose, there was just so many folks who performed on opening day. And so really proud of that. And so then we were able to then like, all right, you did this awesome job. You have all this press and all these things happened. And now we were able to financially get us to a place where we can apply for grants. And so we can't share yet, but we have some awesome opportunities that just, came into fruition. The PA Council of the Arts is funding our work, which is really, really exciting. We're a part of the Core Fellowship, which is through Lehigh Valley Community Foundation, and that is really important. And then, there's been some other opportunities to fund our work as well that will be coming out in a couple months, which is exciting. I want to talk about it, but I can't. But so, yeah, like, I don't know, like we've been rocking and rolling in this new nonprofit dress that we have on. And we're doing the things. But we're at this point, we really, really, really want to bring the community in to be a part of our experiences. And it's so essential for the well-being of our community to get the healing that they need, whether it be through song, whether it be through poetry, whether it be some of our efforts to make sure that artists are supported in different ways. We're really excited for the future of our company. And yeah, we're 2025 is going to be a really awesome year for us. We're going to be putting together an artist retreat in celebration of National Poetry Month to allow artists to kind of come together, but also write and be in community, and also announce that we're looking to start an ensemble. And so this ensemble would be like a core set of artists who would come together and like create productions like we've done before. And that would be a paid opportunity. And and then Joyful Voices. We're working on an artist incubator space possibly. So like we're trying to find a physical space. So if anybody has money for that, anybody has a physical space, let me know.
Reach out, we'll connect you.
Yeah, please. But yeah, so we're really just trying to establish the organization and get it to a place where, artists feel cared for, they get the support that they need. And all the artists that we worked with during the Restoring Petals project, I'm really like blessed to have worked with them, because we were able to then kind of cultivate what 2025 looks like and like what the needs are.
So Chloe, on top of all of the work that you're doing at Basement Poetry and all of your own work, you guys have a new project coming up titled Joyful Voices. So we're so excited that you brought Khalid Taylor, your music director of Joyful Voices, into the studio today. Welcome, Khalid.
Yeah,
Do
thank
like
you so
an
much.
applause sound effect.
Oh yeah. Thanks for having me.
Good, good. So tell us a little bit about this project. It's a new thing, right? A new thing to celebrate.
Yeah, so it's a brand new project. Well, and I would like to say that like it's going to blossom into hopefully a community space. So in a lot of the work that Basement Poetry has done, we've played with song, but we're not like many of us were not singers. Like there was a few of us that could really sing. But one of the things that I really loved when I was in those spaces where we were singing and creating music together was the healing after. Like like I just felt so free and like connected to the people that I was sharing space with as I, sung with the voice that I thought was like, not great, you know what I mean? Like I don't have vocal confidence, so, but it was nice to know that in that space for that moment, I felt like I was Aretha Franklin. And so I've been kind of sitting on this idea of like a choir where there's an opportunity, particularly for folks of any age to be a part of, but also really supporting folks who are parenting. Because I think oftentimes people think like, oh, I just had my first child or I've had my seventh child and my life is ending. And like, for someone who has kind of like supported two younger, in their 20s when they were in their teens, girls, like there was moments in which I was like, man, I wish I had a supportive space where I could be creative and also talk about just like the challenges of like life. So, I reached out to Khalid because Khalid is amazing, and has done, and does an incredible job with like facilitating community spaces around music, and an incredible artist and singer. And I was like, what do you think of this idea? It was first called, oh my God, Lonely People Choir. And Khalid was like, let's think of a different name. Something a little more positive.
Let's flip it.
Because the focus is to really address loneliness in our communities. The pandemic really highlighted a lot of challenges in our communities. And I think one of them was that people feel incredibly lonely in a digital age where we can, talk to someone in China in like 2.5 seconds is amazing, but also like being in community and being in person and having those opportunities are limited because folks who cannot share space because they are immune compromised, like we have to make space for them. And like there's just so many parts of being together that is a risk. And so 2020 really highlighted that. And so how do we allow people to come back into space and really think about their mental health, their creative well-being, all of those things. So this was an opportunity to do that work with community and create a space where people feel safe to sing. Because that's like another thing too. Everyone's like, oh, I gotta be, a really great Frank Sinatra, or like, you gotta be like a pop diva like Ariana Grande. She's a vocalist, so you feel like you need to be these things, right? And so in this space, we're asking folks to not think about that and to just enjoy the healing powers of music and community together. So we have awesome, like each month that we meet, we have like a focused topic, whether it be we're focusing on Black History Month and making sure that we're honoring Black singers, whether it be we're working on like Mental Health Month and like honoring that. I think we're doing something for Earth Day. So like we're really trying to find a way to also educate our communities in this multi-leveled space. And then hopefully the hope is to make sure that we can provide childcare for folks who are parenting as well and really make it like a very rich experience for our community. So all for free. All for free. Always for free.
Free 99.
Free.
That's incredible. And Khalid, like give us your rundown. Like how did you get connected? How did you end up in this space of, it sounds like I know you do a lot. but how did this kind of come about?
Yeah, great question. So Started in 1995. A 12-pound, 3-ounce baby was born into the world, big-headed and all. But yeah, I have been a choir kid since like a wee lad, and I've just loved the way in which once you got a bunch of people in a room together to make a sound, something greater than the sum of its parts happened. And that always did it for me. Often it was through singing, but also like theater spaces, dancing spaces, anywhere where you're like creating something that kind of took you outside of the moment, but you needed to be in the moment to make, was really cool to me. And so, I've been in a lot of choirs. I've performed on a lot of different stages, and I love singing, helping other people sing. So when Chloe was like, "Hey, so want to do this like choir community experience?" I was like, "Hell yeah, hell yeah!" One of the parts that I really loved about it too was in undergrad for finals, which I'm actually working through while we record this podcast. But for undergrad, I remember taking study breaks with some of my friends, and we would go into a room together, or actually into the staircase of the library because it was super acoustic and the echoes and all of that. And we'd create these things called sound machines. So we would just make sounds together, and then they'd like rhythmically line up. And I had boss friends, so they were just like making really cool harmonies and like polyrhythms and syncopations and all that cool stuff, and bringing in like pop songs. Like Neo was definitely on the list, Usher, but like also like Ariana, and just a bunch of like classics too. And we just like created something really cool in a short moment in time, and then it was done, and then we went back to finals. And so I think that there was something about this community choir experience that felt really similar to that possibility, because oftentimes with adults, we're all like super busy and have like a bajillion and a half things to do. And so it's not super realistic to have rehearsals that meet, or I don't know, for some folks who are willing to commit the time to rehearsals on a weekly basis, that's possible. But for a lot of folks who just want to like get into it and have fun, weekly rehearsals is like not super sustainable. And so what I really love about our experience that we're cultivating is that it's you learn the music and you sing it in the same day. And I feel like that can be really intimidating and scary sometimes for folks, but the goal is to create moments that are just like chill and fun, and like call and response, I think, is really a huge part of learning in the spaces that we'll be facilitating and cultivating. So really just if you have an ear and you want to listen and you have a voice and you want to share it, then that's what we'll be doing for like 90 minutes to 2 hours of time together. So yeah, I feel like that kind of one day choir experience for a community doesn't require perfection, which Chloe mentioned earlier too. My dad always said, if you see a perfect person, run the other way because something is going to explode. One of my favorite quotes by him, he has many, but that's a good one for me because I think I've always had kind of expectations of perfection in my head. Like I went to conservatory, I did the whole like opera route, and like I was like, oh my God, I do not like this. And then I also decided to do like science in undergrad. And so I was like, there's a whole other perfectionism there that I was like, all right, I don't like this. Doesn't it feel good? And like, this doesn't feel like it's me. But the spaces where I got to like fumble and stumble and be creative, and like creativity is like structured chaos, right? So like the spaces where I got to like let all of that be were the most fun and the most rewarding and enriching. So hoping to have some like good structured chaos time together where we get to like explore and play and have fun and like let our voices do what they're going to do and see where they're at today, and then check in a month from now when we have our next event and see where it's at that day. But also I think having a collective thing to work towards is really beautiful. So having like a song or a structure that we can then like put our voices together towards and like have a product, quote unquote, at the end of the time, I think is just like a fun challenge that I think is worth like putting our hearts, souls, and voices together towards. So yeah, I think that's kind of like the inspiration for this and why I love doing it and what I hope that we can continue to cultivate in our time together.
Hearing you talk, I'm curious, you've already touched on it a little bit, but like, how do you approach facilitating? I've been lucky enough to like hear the product of the choir kind of experiences. And I'm always amazed at like, I feel like you create spaces that are very welcoming and really allow people to feel like they don't have to be perfect. And that's just so hard in the art world. Like, honestly, I've never for a long time haven't like felt like singing, but I saw the choir perform and I was like, maybe I could sing there. Like that would be okay. I guess I was curious, like, how do you approach facilitating? And then also, if there is anyone who ever modeled that for you, like, you inspired by anybody, love to hear about that too.
Oh my gosh, great questions. I love it. So yeah, I would say, well, one thing that inspired the choir experience for me was the Gaia Music Collective. So they've been really popping in New York and creating one-day choir experiences. And they have like 300 people in a room like that are learning a song in a day and then just like performing the dang thing. Like they are both the audience and the performer, which I love. I love the like breaking down the walls of like audience and performer, because like we're all like in life creating and responding in real time. So they are part of my inspiration, but also my friends who I, just like sing random stuff with on a midnight when we're at fourth meal, getting food together. They're part of my inspiration as well. But in terms of facilitation, I would say that I think one of the goals is to like remind people that our full body is a part of the process of singing. And so oftentimes we think about singing as like from the throat up, but our whole body's an instrument. And so I also am like, I'm an Aquarius, Gemini rising, Leo moon. So I am a cerebral girly and, and I can be, so I can get really caught up in my head a lot. And so I think it's really helpful for me to like come back into my body. I think like that's one of the first like steps that's really helpful for facilitation, is just like the quicker we can get people into their bodies, I think the quicker we can get them into their hearts. And then through your heart we can channel the voice. And so I feel like that's kind of the space that I approach facilitation from. I love me a good joke. I love being silly. Like I'm a goofball at heart, even if I got a serious focus face. And so I try to channel that as much as possible. And then I'm really big on like strengths-based approaches to facilitation. Like I'm like, everybody's powerful, everybody's a creator, everybody's got the juice, and everybody has a piece of the puzzle. So how can I hold a space that allows you to show up in like that fullness and recognition? So I'm always quick to affirm and like always quick to be like, okay, like let's see how we can make this even better, as opposed to approaching it from a deficit kind of or a lacking space, because we don't need any more of that. I feel like we have so much representation of that type of message in the media on a day-to-day basis of like, you are not enough, or like what you have is not worthy of the space and time that, we need. And so I feel like there's a need to, like, especially social media too, as like we tend to curate so much of our lives to be aesthetically like pleasing and receptive to other folks. And so I do not want that in this space. Like, yeah, like, I mean, as a performer, like I love putting on a good show and performance and aesthetic experience to some degree, but at the same time, like I want it really to be just like, how can we just like sing like that? Real, like at the end of the day, like it's just, I'm gonna play a note on the piano and then we're gonna see what's gonna come out, And so, yeah, I think those are kind of my intentions around facilitation, is just like, keep it easy, keep it breezy, keep it flowing, and connect to like why you're there in the first place, and how can we keep that energy going throughout the whole experience.
Yeah. I like the point that you made, Robin, just about like music is such a difficult thing for so many people, I think. And like coming from a background where like I was taught an instrument, and then you play the instrument, and then you practice the instrument, and then you perform the instrument, and then you go back and do it all again. It's that like conservatory culture of just do it until it's perfect is so stressful that it made me like lose my love and appreciation for it. And I think this space, like I also was at this choir performance, and like I was like emotional where I was like, this is like exactly the type of experience I need. And there's a kind of the orchestral flip of this group that exists in the Lehigh Valley called the Really Terrible Orchestra. Ooh. And it's a similar concept where it really is just a space, like it doesn't have to be perfect. We can get together and we play at an old folks home. It's fabulous. But like there is I want more people to know about spaces like that because it's such a healing and good community space where like it's for you, like you can come together and it's not necessarily even it's a performance, but it doesn't have to be performative. It's for you as a person to enjoy, and it's so good. And I felt so good after that. Like I thought about it for like 3 days. I was like
I love to hear that though. I mean, we definitely need more spaces where perfection is not centered. If anything, it's like actively not, encouraged. I feel like there's also this piece too where like all of our side hustles have to be like money makers too, right? Sure. We can't just be like amateurs. Like I want to bring back the love of like amateur, just like expression and like just do that for the sake of doing, like not necessarily having to attach a label of like, I'm an artist or I'm a singer and I sing on a daily basis. Like it's just, like I might be cooking and like the tune, like, is it the way she loves me, baby, comes to mind and I want to sing that. Or like, I'm walking down the street and like I hear a song that's playing in someone else's car and like I'm harmonizing to it. I'm having fun. I'm having a good time. Like I want to do that. Like I want those types of experiences to be welcomed and encouraged in this space. Cause like, like we should have fun. I like our art should be fun, or can be at least. Mm-hmm.
I saw this post a couple weeks ago that was going around on like a lot of Lehigh Valley art people's Instagrams that was like, you guys are unhappy because you're not doing arts and crafts. You should be doing arts and crafts once a week. And I was like, yes.
That part.
And like, it's not even, I think there's this thought that it has to be something so structured and good. And like, really, you can just kind of like sit and fold some paper and then go on your merry way. And it has such an impact on you that maybe you don't even notice. So I think, like giving people that people don't need permission for it, but giving them the space and permission to like do that, exactly what you said, is a good thing.
I also appreciated what you said about embodiment, because like when I think about basement poetry like as an organization, I think a lot of it about, at least from, I haven't participated, but it feels a lot related to like embodiment as an artist and having like the art, like sometimes like the idea of maybe like re-embodiment. Like I think as marginalized people, you like feel a separation from your body sometimes and the way it's perceived or those kinds of things. And like a lot of these spaces, and especially like this project, it feels like a reunite with that and like feel in your body again, even if it's just for the space. And that's just like really beautiful.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think too, like basement poetry, at the core of our mission, we really want to make sure that artists and community members are experiencing the effects of like healing. And like, what does it mean to address mental health? What does it mean to address the health of your body, your physical health, your emotional health, all of those things? And I feel like oftentimes, like when people think of collectives, they also continue to think like, oh, in order to be a part of this collective or this group, you have to be this perfect, most like followed artist with the most perfect stuff, with the most perfect poetry. And it's like, no, like this is an incubator space. And we want to hold it all, because I think as we're going into 2025, there's a lot of unknowns for many communities. And I really feel like Joyful Voices is going to hold a very important and valuable space as we heal and process the world around us. Because the world is unkind and there's so much news and there's so much propaganda and there's so many things that are being told to us, and so much violence as we talk about marginalized communities and things like that. And it is heightened, especially in 2024. And so I think it's really important that we find a space where the community can come together and not necessarily be concerned. Because one of the things that I think is important, especially when you're talking about facilitation and like facilitating community space, is having something that everyone can gravitate towards and make a decision on. Like, okay, maybe this isn't for me. I'll come next week. Yeah. Right. And that doesn't make you a good or bad person. Right. Okay, I really like this song this month, so I'll stay. So we're hoping to reach a large platform of folks and like, get it out in the community, but really create a space where people feel safe to say, you know what, maybe this isn't for me, because the world doesn't allow us to do that.
Yeah.
And so like there's a lot of consent and choice, and I'm hoping that this is an opportunity for the community to feel safe, because as we are moving into 2025, a lot of communities feel very unsafe. And so we're hoping that this is a safe space for people to have fun. That's the core, fun.
And play.
Yes.
Yeah.
And play is so important, especially when you're talking about like folks getting into the workspace. Like play is important for the healing of the whole person, but is essential for every part of our lives. We're not going to be creative at work, or we're not going to be creative at home when we're raising our families and our children, if we don't get an opportunity to play and take care of ourselves. And really feel our full self, because that's like another thing too. Like you work a 9 to 5, you don't necessarily feel your full self unless it's the holidays or you're on vacation. But like, what does it mean to take care of yourself at least for a month? Come and sing with us, and have a good time. And then there is also, I just wanted to share some statistics. So I talked a lot about Joyful Voices being a space for community and like really addressing loneliness, but Chorus America did some research on choirs, and it shows that 73% of chorus participants report feeling less lonely, a sense of belonging, and reduced social isolation. And as you know, when those things are heightened, there is an opportunity for folks to feel unwanted, uncared for, and so higher risk of suicide or suicidal ideation, higher risk of violence in communities. So this is also not just a project that's like sitting in this centering fun and joy, but we are centering safety. We are centering a liberation in this work as well. So,
Period.
I'll be talking. You gotta stop me.
I'm here for it. No, keep going. Keep going. Keep going.
That's what the podcast is for.
Okay,
It's for
right.
talking,
Talk
right?
your stuff.
I'll talk myself.
Let it all out. That's excellent. Good. Well, I want to celebrate the work that you're doing, and I'm so glad that you both are here today and that we got a chance to talk. If you're listening to the episode, the folks that are listening, is there a place that they can connect with you or find out about the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so they can email us at basementpoems@gmail.com, or they can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Basement Poetry, and hopefully we'll have a website soon. So the website would be basementpoetry.org. I just want to extend an invitation out to the listening world to be a part of this work, to be a part of this community. And we're really small right now, but we would love to work with artists and find different ways to create art together. And we've been really, really blessed to continue this work. And next year, it'll be about almost 10 years of this work. So we live in celebration, but we really do this work with community, and we hope that we see more artists, and we have some really amazing things coming in 2025 and some awesome announcements. But I think the biggest ones that we can share is Joyful Voices. Come and be a part of our intergenerational community choir, and the artist retreat in April. It's like TBA moment, but we're also looking for folks to help us create an ensemble who's interested in writing original theater productions through choreo poetry. So, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you for having me and having us.
Chloe, Khalid, and Robin, thank you all so much for joining us on today's episode. This episode's opportunities are all presented by Basement Poetry. Joyful Voices is back. Join us for our second choir experience on February 22nd from 1:30 to 4 p.m. Come sing, connect, and enjoy some snacks. Keep an eye out for our brand new Inspire Cr8tivity Micro-Grants, designed to support artists and small businesses that uplift the arts community. And coming in April of 2025, Basement Poetry presents Dream Lab, an artist escape, an overnight retreat designed to fuel your creativity.
Scholarships will be available for artists to attend. More details coming soon. To keep up with all of these opportunities and more, make sure you follow Basement Poetry on all social media platforms.
Thanks for tuning in to the Lehigh Valley Arts Podcast. Don't forget to like the podcast, leave us a review, and follow us on both social media and streaming services at Lehigh Valley Arts Podcast.